Hey, what's up, guys? This is Entendre, and today I'm going to be starting a new series called Sound Design Sessions. This is episode 1, and I'm just going to go into some synthesis basics. So, we're going to talk about subtractive synthesis, and I hope you enjoy. So, let's get right into it. I thought I'd show you a synth that was one of the first that I used for subtractive synthesis in Reason. And now that there's the Reason Rack plugin, I can run it in Ableton. It's a Subtractor synth. As the name would suggest, it's a subtractive synthesizer. And so I thought it'd be good for this example. So if you right-click on it and you say Reset Device, that's the initial state. It sounds like this. It's a saw wave with the filter turned halfway down. And if I open up the filter, you can see it's got some more harmonics there. And so that's basically your basic saw wave, which is usually the initial preset on mini synths. And the saw wave has every single partial in the harmonic series, so it's a very rich and full sound, and it's good for simulating like string instruments, sometimes horns even. If you get the filter just right and the filter envelope, you can get some really realistic sounds out of just a saw wave. It's also used in a lot of Psy for like squelches and plucks and whatnot. So we also have the square wave, which is similar, but it's alternating all the partials. So instead of every partial, it's every other partial, and it's got more of a hollow sound as a result. And it's good for things like flutes. If you get the filter envelope just right and layer it with some noise and stuff, you can get some really nice flutes out of it, or really good deep like garage bass, that sort of thing. So we also have the triangle wave. Now the triangle wave is a little bit more subtle, and it's actually every third harmonic in the harmonic series. If you look here, there's less than if you looked at the square or the saw that has every harmonic there. Now back to the triangle. This can also be really good for flutes, or the body of a drum, or bass lines, any number of things, really. A modulator, very useful shape as well. And once you start to recognize these, you'll hear them popping up more and more in songs that you hear, or if you're trying to go for a certain sound, you'll just have an idea of which sound to start from. So next up we have the sine wave. Now this is the most basic of all because it's just a single harmonic, and basically, the idea with subtractive synthesis is to take a rich harmonic waveform and then filter it out. So we have different types of filters here: a notch, high pass 12, band pass 12, low pass 12, and low pass 34. So 34 just means it's a steeper curve, so it's going to cut off faster than, say, a 12. Or more aggressively, but if I use like a low pass 12, still rolls it off, but it's a little bit less aggressive. As opposed to and the filter brings that out as well. So with the low pass 24, you can see the steep curve here. Whereas if I switch to a low pass 12, it's a little bit less steep. So that's that. And then band pass. So low pass is going to roll off the higher frequencies, the higher harmonics. Whereas a band pass is just going to let through the middle harmonics. And a high pass is only going to let through the high frequencies and cut out all the low frequencies as you move up. And then you have a notch, which is going to, as the name suggests, cut a notch in the filter spectrum as you move through it. So then more complex waveforms with more harmonics can be found when you go into some of these higher numbers of waveforms. And then it becomes almost bell-like. Of course, if you filter it out, it's still bell-like, but it smooths out some of those high frequencies, which is kind of the main thing with Subtractive, is just letting through the frequencies that you want and taking out the rest. And the Subtractor is cool because you can also turn on a second envelope, do some FM. Changing this second waveform changes the FM effect, even if the mix is turned to just play oscillator 1. You can also adjust the mode here. And try different octaves. So instead of triangle can make a nice modulator if you're doing FM, which we'll cover in a later video in more depth, but you can get some rich waveforms using FM to then use subtractive synthesis on with filters. And a lot of times the sine wave or triangle works well for FM. Wow. So that's basics when it comes to FM. That's the basics, and from there it's just experimenting and creating more and more harmonic rich content to then filter out. And there's different ways to create that harmonic content, but the idea of Subtractive is just the filtering it out from that harmonically rich content. You can turn on this filter envelope to automate some of that filter movement. Tons of sounds can be created with subtractive synthesis, everything from trumpet simulations to snare drums to flutes and bass sounds, risers, all sorts of things. I mean, if you find like a noise sample, something kind of noisy, could be good for a riser or something. You also have these mod envelopes here. Again, this is just adding to the harmonics and modulating some of this stuff. You have a couple filters on here as well. You could double filter it and link that or not. So yeah, that's Subtractor for you. Now we're going to take a look at some other synths just so you can get a feel for it aside from just Subtractor. So let me put these on the master and load up a different synth here. So we're going to try Ableton's operator. This synth is also capable of FM. However, it has this filter section, so it's well suited for subtractive synthesis. So let's go ahead and pull those up again. Just like with Subtractor, we have this single harmonic for the sine wave. And if I move these over here, let me open up operator now. And if I turn up this level, it's going to start applying FM. So that'll introduce some more harmonics. Now I can go ahead and use the filter. So and here you have some different algorithms for the filter. So you can turn on some filter drive. Depending on the filter type, the drive is going to be a little different. And you you can also change the source wave. So if I want a square wave, and that's going to sound different depending on the FM. And the filtering applied. So let's try some other filters. And the filters are going to sound quite different depending on the resonance, as well as the distortion and this slope. So here's an example, a visual reference of how the slope changes between 12 and 24. It's just more of a steep slope, as we discussed. Higher numbers have a more steep slope, as opposed to so it just depends how transparent you want the filter to sound, or if you want it to really color the sound and stand out. You also have these shapers. And you could get different types of squares in Operator. So you can see that this only has 3 harmonics, but if we select the 4 harmonic, it's going to be a little bit more intense. If you select the 6 harmonic, and so on, it gets more intense all the way up to square D, which is just all of the harmonics, but every other. Whereas if you do saw D, that's every harmonic. And it's exactly the same in synths like Serum or Sylenth 1 or Zebra 2. Most synths have the subtractive concepts as part of the synth. So as one final example, I just want to show you subtractive synthesis using the Moog Minitaur analog bass synthesizer. So I have it connected to Ableton. I just have the audio out going into my sound cards in, and then I have the MIDI from the sound card going into the Minitaur. So I'm running the MIDI out of Ableton. So now if I press play, you can see that it's a sine wave right now. Now if I press this button, it switches to a square wave. Also turn on this second oscillator by turning up the volume, and then you can adjust the pitch of that second oscillator here, and you can also change the shape here between saw and square. So you get some nice combinations there to create harmonics, and then the filter is really sweet on the Minitaur, so let's go ahead and filter it. And right now I have a rolling pattern, so it's playing every 16th note. So if I adjust the envelope, we're going to hear that. So this is the filter envelope right here. So right now it's kind of raising the filter for each note. You could also have it drop the filter by turning this down and turning this up. Here's the resonance, so that'll make the filter more pronounced and more bell-like, resonant. And then you have this envelope amount here. Then you have this glide rate, which would be helpful if you're going between different notes. So let me close that out, and we can add some variation in here. Let's open up that window again. And then you have the LFO section here. So LFOs can kind of automate moving around some of these parameters. So the first is the rate, and then you have the frequency of the oscillator, and then you have the frequency or the depth of the filter. So yeah, you get the idea. There's a lot of possibilities with Subtractive, and so yeah, have fun with it. So yeah, that's pretty well all I wanted to cover in this episode is just some of the basics. We're gonna go way in depth in all sorts of sound design topics, so please subscribe for future updates, and definitely let me know what you think in the comments if you have any suggestions. And until next time, I'm Antandra. Have a wonderful day. Peace.